Magandang araw po sa lahat. Ako po si Denise Rajamat from G2AS at ngayong araw na ito ay tatalakayin natin ang Lesson 8 ng Readings in the Philippine History, which is ang The Philippines under the United States. So sa aralin na ito ay tatalakayin natin kung ano nga ba ang mga kaganapan sa Pilipinas during nung pananakop ng mga Amerikano. Ano nga ba ang naging pulot-dulo kung bakit tayo nasakop ng mga Amerikano. So let's start from the key concepts. Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is a 10-year transition period that replaced the insular government of the United States in the Philippines and prepared the government for independence. So, kini, Commonwealth, kay gi-establish ni siya ni Manuel L. Quezon of the Nacionalista Party who won the re-election in 1941. The Philippines was under the United States Commonwealth from 1935 to 1946 when the United States still controlled it. The Tidings-MacJuff Act, signed into law by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1934, establishing the Commonwealth of the Philippines and a 10-year transition independence. So the Philippines became an independent republic on July 4, 1946. Next is ang Philippinization. Philippinization is a process of placing Filipinos in positions of responsibility and grant them as much autonomy as possible and encouraging American government officials in the Philippines to retire or leave their posts. So, ang kining koan, Philippinization is just like prioritizing Filipinos, putting them into positions, giving them jobs, while gina-encourage nila ang mga Americans nga mapahawa sa Philippines or sa ilang mga work to give it to the Filipinos. Next is ang homesteading, a policy of the U.S. colonial government to attract settlers from what was seen as overcrowded regions to settle in what was seen as underpopulated southern Philippines. So if we look into our cardinal directions, the southern part of the Philippines is the Mindanao, right? And ang aim ni nga policy is to integrate or combine ng mga local populations para mahimong larger community, something like that. So gamiton nila ang mga resources and also to share and spread cultural values, cultural values like that. So ang Kalibapi, kapisanan ng paglilingkod sa bagong Pilipinas, or in English, Association for Service to the New Philippines, a fascist Filipino political party during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines that replaced all political parties when the latter was declared dissolved. So, kining Kalibapi Kalibapi was under the leadership of George Vargas. He established Kalibapi as a mass movement designed to support the occupation while taking the advantage of Filipino nationalism in the region. So, the turn of the 20th century was a turbulent period of the country when the United States entered as new colonizers in the Philippines and left an indelible mark. So, ang sabi dito nung pagpasok ng Amerika sa Pilipinas is naging chaotic, naging magulo, and nag-arise na yung mga conflict which resulted to war. United States began its colonization on Philippines on May 1, 1898. The conflict was a violent conflict born out of Filipino aspirations independence following Spain's defeat. The war resulted in establishment of the United States colonial rule, which sought to impose American governance and cultural values on the archipelago. This colonial system favored a small group of Filipino elites, particularly those who were Christian, while marginalized groups, including Muslims and indigenous Lumads, faced discrimination and exclusion from political power and land ownership. So, luoy kayo sila ang mga Lumads and Muslims. Kinamay ka ng mga bias. So, on June 12, 1898, the Philippine Declaration of Independence was proclaimed in Cavite El Viejo, present-day Kawit, Cavite. Kini nga time is friend pa nato ang Americans. So, the event saw the unfurling of the national flag of the Philippines made in Hong Kong by Marcela Agoncillo, Lorenza Agoncillo, and Delfina Herbosa. The performance of the Marcha Filipina Magdalo as the national anthem, known as the Lupang Hinirang, which was composed by Julian Felipe and played by Francisco Malabon Marching Band. The Act of Declaration of Independence was presented, written, and read by Ambrosio Rianzares Bautista. So, ang deklarasyon ay nilagdaan ng 98 na katao kasama ang isang Amerikanong Army na si Officer L.M. Johnson as a witness sa nasabing proklamasyon. After the proclamation of the Philippine independence, Apolinario Mabini, the advisor of General Aguinaldo, changed the form of government from dictatorial to revolutionary, and this became Emilio Aguinaldo the president of the revolutionary government, katuwang si Apolinario Mabini. But this declaration was opposed by the U.S. who had plans of taking over the colony, and this led to a guerrilla war against the Americans. Hindi kinilala ng Estados Unidos maging ng mga Espanya ang proklamasyon o araw ng kalayaan ng mga Filipino na pinangunahan ni Aguinaldo dahil para sa mga Amerikano, isa lamang iyong indikasyon ng pagpapatuloy ng kolonyalismo, pero this time sa pamamahala naman ng Amerika. Faced with defeat, the Philippines was ceded to the United States by Spain in 1898 after the payment of $20 million in accordance with the Treaty of Paris, ending the Spanish-American War. So, nag-iba ang ihip ng hangin. Ang dating kakampi ng Pilipinas sa bansang Amerika ay unti-unting naging kaaway nito. Mula sa pagkatalo ng Espanya sa Amerika, tuluyan na nitong isinuko ang Pilipinas sa pamamagitan ng Treaty of Paris. Ang Treaty of Paris ay ginanap noong 1898, December 10, sa kasunduang Treaty of Paris, ipinagbili ng Espanya ang Pilipinas sa halagang $20 million, and it was argued that the Philippines would simply fall into the hands of Germany or other countries if U.S. forces left the region, since the Filipinos were unprepared to govern themselves. So, yan yung sabi nila. So, kung hindi tayo mapupunta sa mga Amerikano, ay pag-aagawan tayo ng ibang mga bansa na magpapatuloy ng pananakop. It's either Germany or other countries. So, dahil dito, tinutulan ito ng mga Pilipino. Hindi napigil ang bansang Espanya. Nung nabalitaan ito ni Emilio Aguinaldo, agad niyang ipinadala sa Paris si Felipe Agoncillo. Si Felipe Agoncillo ay isang diplomat na kumakatawan sa Pilipinas, ngunit pagdating sa Paris ay hindi siya nagtagumpay na mapigilan ang kasunduan sa pagitan ng Amerika at Espanya, kung kaya tuluyan nang napasakamay ng Amerika ang bansang Pilipinas. Dahil tuluyan nang napasakamay ng bansang Amerika ang Pilipinas, nagkaroon ng panibagong war, which is the Philippine-American War noong 1999 hanggang 1902. So, alamin natin kung paano nakawala ang Pilipinas sa pananakop ng Amerika. So, the Philippine-American War, 1899 to 1902. So, hostilities broke out on February 4, 1899 after two American private son killed 3 Filipino soldiers in San Juan, a Manila suburb. So this incident sparked the Philippine-American War, which cost far more money and took far more lives rather than the Spanish-American War. So, nang dahil sa insidenteng iyon, nag-request ng isang paglilitis para malaman kung sino talaga ang nagpasimula ng gulo. Ito nga ba ang kampo ng mga Amerikano o ang kampo ng mga Filipino soldiers? Nang dahil doon, ipinag-utos ni General Arthur MacArthur na lumusob ang mga Amerikano sa Pilipinas, sa mga Pilipino, kahit na walang formal na paglilitis o pagsisiyasat. At ito ang lubos na ikinagalit ni Aguinaldo. So dahil dito, nakiusap si Aguinaldo kay Elwell Otis na iwasan ang labanan kung maaari. Pero niya si Otis nga kailangan nang i-continue ang war kaya nasugda naman siya. At ayon sa investigasyon ni Felipe Buencamino, ay kay ang nag-start sa away kay ang mga Americans. So, Filipino-American Collaborative Empire. Filipino-American Collaborative Empire. Historian Michael Culline's concept of Filipino-American Collaborative Empire highlights the complex relationship between the United States and the Filipino elites. So, ang kini siya, the core of this concept tells about how certain Filipino leaders, often sa mga educated o economically privileged classes, align themselves with the American colonial authorities. This collaboration was often motivated by a desire for political power, economic opportunity, and modernization. So by cooperating with the Americans, these leaders aimed to elevate their own status and influence within the new political framework imposed by the United States. So while Filipinos fought the United States in the Philippine-American War, which lasted for more than a decade, an easy alliance between the Filipino and the American colonial forces created significant tensions within the political landscape, and it resulted in vigorous debates regarding sovereignty, identity, and what it is truly meant to be a Filipino amidst the colonial rule. Nationalism grew among those who felt excluded from the benefits of this collaboration, leading to various movements advocating for genuine self-governance and social justice. So the continuing battle for the Philippine independence shifted from battlefield to political negotiations. The struggle for independence began shifting from armed conflict to political dialogue. So in 1935, the establishment of the Philippine Commonwealth was a significant milestone as it created a pathway toward greater autonomy. So Manuel L. Quezon, as the first president of the Commonwealth, championed the national governance while navigating both internal political dynamics and external pressures. So particularly from the Japanese invasion during World War II. So the Filipinos and Americans fought side by side during World War II. It was on 1942 to 1945. So the Philippines was declared independent on July 4, 1946, when President Harry S. Truman did so in the proclamation. So after the proclamation, naa sila ay ginatawag nga Philippine-American Friendship. So mara na ang nasa Philippines under the United States. Next is ang napay Filipino grievances against Governor General Wood. Filipino grievances against Governor General Wood or ang mga hinaing o complaints laban kay Governor General Wood and why he was seen as anti-Filipino. So kining nas picture is mao ni si Governor General Wood. So the question of how long U.S. colonial rule should last in the Philippines changed according to which party occupied the White House, as the U.S. president appointed American colonial officials and dictated the policy toward the Philippines. So, the changing attitudes towards U.S. colonial rule in the Philippines based on which political party was in power in the United States. The first decade of colonial rule was dominated by the U.S. Republican Party, whose presidents William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, and William Howard Taft advocated about two generations of U.S. hegemony in the Philippines. So the Republicans supported a long-term U.S. presence in the Philippines, while the Democrats, on the other hand, wanted independence to be granted sooner. So the victory of the Democrats bet Woodrow Wilson in the 1912 U.S. elections ushered the tide of change that reached Philippine shores with the appointment of Francis Burton Harrison as the Governor General. The Democrats favored granting independence sooner. When Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, won the presidency, he appointed Francis Burton Harrison as Governor General. Harrison was tasked in the Philippinization of the colonial state, broadening the participation of Filipinos in political affairs and overseeing the transfer of leadership of the Moro and Mountain provinces from the U.S. Army to Filipino officials in 1916. The U.S. Congress passed the Philippine Autonomy Act, or Jones Law, which created a bicameral legislature composed of the upper and lower houses. From 29% in 1913, the proportion of American officials shrank to 6% in 1912. So, marking a shift towards allowing more Filipino participation in the government and looking forward to granting independence. So, in 1920, the Democrats lost the presidency, and President Warren Harding appointed Leonard Wood and William Cameron Forbes to investigate the Philippines, satisfy the conditions set by the Jones Law. So after Wilson's period, when the Republicans regained power, they appointed Leonard Wood and William Cameron Forbes to investigate if the Philippines was ready for greater autonomy as outlined in the Jones Law. So the report exposed the corruption and patronage system in the government, evidenced by abnormal transactions in public land administration and banking malpractice that bankrupt the Philippine National Bank, as well as the lack of accountability to the American executive leadership. So the investigation revealed a significant corruption within the Filipino government, which upset Filipino leaders like Manuel L. Quezon. So the report enraged Quezon and the Nacionalistas, who responded that their critics were anti-Filipino and not supporting the cause for independence, when in fact the political and economic elites have been using their power to appoint supporters in government positions and enriching themselves through government corporations. So they felt criticized and accused those pointing out corruption of being against the Filipino independence movement, even though many within their ranks were benefiting themselves from the system. The appointment of Leonard Wood as Governor General in 1921 further stoked the annoyance of Filipino leaders because para sa mga local governments, ang leadership ni Governor General Wood was seen as controlling and detrimental. As Wood monitored the local politicians, trimmed the bloated budget, vetoed legislation designed to benefit Filipino politicians, appointed U.S. military and men in key executive positions, and strengthened the powers of the Governor General. So, he made various changes that restricted Filipino participation in politics and managed budget tightly mo nang gihimo ni Governor General Wood, which na-threaten ang mga na-threaten ang mga interest sa mga local politicians. So, mo to siya. Another issue that would lead to the Filipino elites petition for the recall for Governor Wood occurred in 1923. When Wood reinstated Ray Conley, police chief of the Vice Squad, who was accused of receiving bribes from gambling lords, who did not allow Filipinos to conduct an administrative investigation on Conley, and instead created a board of investigate. Conley was acquitted, but Filipino officials felt insulted. Manila Mayor Ramon Fernandez and Justice Secretary Jose Laurel resigned from office, while Senate President Manuel L. Quezon and Speaker Manuel Rojas resigned as members of the Council of State. Quezon and Rojas also ordered all nationalistas to resign from their membership in executive agencies, refused to pass bills by Wood, and attempted to override bills he vetoed. So the budget tightly, which threatened interest of local politicians, his decision to reinstate a police chief accused of corruption further angered Filipino officials, resulting in resignations and protests against his administration. So, mo nilang gihimo nang leave sila, showing escalating tensions between local leaders and U.S. authority. The petition letter, Filipino Grievances Against Governor General Wood, is a joint resolution to express hatred felt against Governor General Wood and the way he ran the state's affairs. The letter juxtaposed the earlier years of American colonial rule to the draconian leadership of Wood. So, ang draconian leadership daw ni Wood, kaya ang draconian leadership is, siya, a style of leadership that uses harsh and severe rules or measures, inana. So, the first two paragraphs read, mo ni siya ang petition letter ni para kay Governor General Wood. More than a quarter of a century has elapsed since the Philippines came under the American flag, an emblem of freedom, not of subjugation, a symbol of altruism, not of selfishness or greed. American sovereignty was implanted in our country with the avowed purpose of training us in the art of self-government and granting us independence. Our God, not her gain, was to be America's aim. Our country was committed to her entrust to be conserved and developed for the benefit of our people. Believing in the sincerity of America's purpose, the Filipinos applied themselves to the task of meeting the conditions exacted of them, anxiously awaiting the day when the Americas would honor her promise. The first 20 years of civil government were marked by mutual understandings and loyal cooperation between American and Filipinos. At the end of that period, when it seemed that the goal had finally been reached, after the President of the United States had advised the Congress that the time had come for America to fulfill her sacred pledge, Major General Leonard Wood was sent to the Philippines as Governor General. Cognizant of the part taken by General Wood in liberation of Cuba, the Filipino people expected under his administration the spirit of cooperation would be maintained and that the work of political emancipation would be complete. Contrary, however, to our expectations, his conduct of government has been characterized by a chain of usurpations and arbitrary acts, resulting in the entailment of our autonomy, the destruction of our constitutional system, and the reversal of America's Philippine society. So, Philippine policy pala. So, the petition letter against Governor General Wood expressed the anger of Filipino leaders towards Wood's administration. The signatories believe that when the U.S. first took control of the Philippines, they promised to help the country become governing and independent. So the years leading up to Wood's appointment were seen as cooperative, but his arrival marked a regress. They accused him of undermining the autonomy and the constitutional rights. So they had to work hard. Uh, constitutional rights they work hard to achieve. What followed is a list of usurpations committed by Wood, which contain more than 20 accusations, such as his refusal to agree with the laws that were the most wholesome and necessary for the public good, reverse the Philippinization of government service by appointing Americans in positions, violated the law by using certain public funds to grant additional compensation to public officials, unduly interfered in the administration of justice, refused to confer with the Senate on important matters, and created discord and disagreement between Christian and Muslim Filipinos among others. So, Filipino leaders accused him of various usurpations such as blocking beneficial laws, reversing efforts to hire more Filipinos in government positions, maragibali niya ang Filipinization, misusing public funds, interfering in justice, and failing to collaborate with the Filipino Senate. They also claimed he created divisions among different Filipino groups, demonstrating widespread discontent with his administration. The letter ended with a manifestation of the Filipino leaders' protest stated as follows. In the face of this critical situation, we, the constitutional representatives of the Filipino people, met to deliberate upon the present difficulties existing in the government of the Philippine Islands, and to determine how best to preserve the supremacy and majesty of the laws and to safeguard the rights and liberties of our people. Having faith in the sense of justice of the people of the United States and inspired by her patriotic example in the early days of her history, do hereby, in our behalf and in the name of the Filipino people, solemnly and publicly make known our most vigorous protest against the arbitrary acts and usurpations of the present Governor-General of the Philippine Islands, particularly against Order Number 37. The consequences of our sacred and inescapable duty to our country and our sense of loyalty to the people of the United States constrain us to denounce the foregoing acts of the present Governor-General as arbitrary, oppressive, and undemocratic. We appeal to the judgment and conscience of the American people in justification of our stand and for the vindication of our rights. So the closing of the petition emphasizes the constitutional representatives of the Filipino people gathered to protest Wood's actions. They expressed their commitment to uphold the law and rights of the people, criticizing Wood's leadership as arbitrary and oppressive. They appealed to be the American public sense or justice support, framing their actions as a fight for the rights, dignity, and democratic governance. So, the analysis of the petition letter. The corruption and patronage politics of the dominant Nacionalista Party led by Quezon and his men have been criticized not only by Wood but also by other Filipino leaders. The same corruption was enabled by Governor Harrison, whose appointment Quezon himself lobbied. thus exaggerating and blowing things out of proportion would not be surprising. The Nacionalista Party, who dominated legislature, were using their positions to broaden their power in preparation for Philippine independence, and the change of leadership from the well-loved Harrison to the cold Wood was tantamount of throwing the plans of Quezon and his men. So, uh, the analysis of the petition letter talks about the situation with the Governor General Leonard Wood and the complaints against him. So it says that the main Filipino political group, the Nacionalista Party led by Quezon, was criticized by Wood and other Filipino leaders for being corrupt, and it also mentions that corruption existed under the previous governor, which is Harrison, even though Quezon supported him. This means that exaggerating the complaints in the petition may not be surprising given the political situation. The analysis also says that the Nacionalista Party used their power in the government to get ready for the Philippine independence. It explains that changing from the popular Harrison to the less liked Wood was seen as a problem for Quezon's plans, but it also admits that there were valid complaints against the Nacionalistas. But the grievances of Nacionalistas were also not unfounded. Before being appointed Governor General Leonard Wood was the former military governor of the Moro province and popular with the Muslims. As Governor General, he transferred jurisdiction of Muslim areas to American-headed executive agencies and assured them that independence is still far in future. His acts as governor, while a way to monitor the nationalistas and curb their corruption is also consistent with the U.S. Republicans' lukewarm reception to the idea of the Philippines being independent sooner than later. So about Wood, the analysis explains that he used to be liked by the Muslims when he was in charge of the province, but when he became Governor General, some of his actions, like giving control of Muslim areas to Americans, made people worry that independence would be delayed. However, it suggests that Wood might have been trying to stop corruption in the Nacionalista Party, which matched the U.S. Republicans' view of not wanting the Philippines to be independent too soon. Nonetheless, the petition revealed several interesting aspects of the quest for Filipino independence during this period. We see how the issue of independence has been taking advantage of some Filipino politicians to empower and enrich themselves, further, further making it challenging to ascertain if they were fighting for independence for the sake of the country being free or for their benefit later on. So, nonetheless, the petition revealed several interesting aspects of Filipino aspects for the quest of Filipino independence during this period. We see how the issue of dependence has been taking advantage of some Filipino politicians to empower and enrich themselves further, making it challenging to ascertain if they were fighting for independence for the sake of the country being free or for their benefit later on. So, in short, the analysis talks about the complicated politics during this time in the Philippines under the United States rule and how under the United States rule and how it's hard to know the real reasons behind the complaints in the petition. An infamous quote from Quezon comes to mind. I would rather have a government run like hell by Filipinos than a government run like heaven by Americans. Also, the petition letter also shows the tenacity of the Filipino leaders during this period. Wood was not free from fault, so they wanted him to be accountable for his conscious acts to slow down Filipinization. So after Wood's death in 1927, his successors were less interested in maintaining strong American control in the Philippines. This allowed the momentum for the Philippine independence to grow stronger. But eventually in 1934, lobbying efforts resulted in the passing of the Philippine Independence Act, also known as the Tidings-Magdiuf Act. This act paved the way for eventual independence for the Philippines. Overall, this part of the text highlights the resilience of the Filipino leaders in in the quest for independence and the eventual success of their efforts. Analysis of the political caricatures and comic strips. The transition from the Spanish colonial period to the American occupation period demonstrated different strands of changes and shifts in culture, society, and politics. The Americans drastically introduced democracy to the nascent nation, and the consequences were far from ideal. So, the Philippines transitioning from Spanish colonial rule to American occupation, it introduces the complexities of these changes in terms of culture, society, and politics. It was also during the American period that Filipinos were introduced to different manifestations of modernity like healthcare, modern transportation, and media democracy ushered in a more open and fair press. So ano, while the Americans introduced the democratic ideals of the Philippines, the of this new democracy were mixed. The post-independence and the post-occupation period in the Philippines were experienced differently by Filipinos coming from different classes. The upper Principalia class experienced economic prosperity with the opening up of the Philippine economy to the United States, but the majority of the poor Filipinos remained poor, desperate, and victimized by the state repression. So, the upper class, particularly the Principalia, benefited from economic growth tied to American interests, while the majority of the population continued to face poverty and state suppression. This highlights a significant social divide that would echo in the future Filipino politics and economy. The selected cartoons not just illustrate the opinion of certain media outfits about Philippine society during the American period, but also paint a broad image of culture and politics under the United States. In the arena of politics, for example, we see the price that Filipinos paid for the democracy modeled after the Americans. First, it seemed that the Filipino politicians at the same time did not understand well enough the essence of democracy and the accompanying democratic institutions and processes. This observation can be seen with the rising dynastic politics in Tondo as depicted in the cartoon published by the Independent. The patronage also became influential and as depicted in the card and powerful not only between clients and patrons but also between the newly formed political parties composed of the elite in the United States. This relationship was depicted from the cartoon where the United States, represented by Uncle Sam, provided doleouts for members of the Federalista Party while the Nacionalista politicians looked on and waited for their turn. Thus, the essence of competing political parties to enforce choices among the voters was cancelled out. The problem continues up to the present where politicians transfer from one party to another, depending on which party was dominant in specific periods. So, the political cartoons that emerged during the American period is a reflection of the social-political climate in the Philippines. So, it argues that these cartoons not only express the views of specific media outlets, but also encapsulates broader themes regarding the cultural and political realities of the time. Observing that Filipino politicians may not fully grasp the concepts of democracy, this points that the rise of dynastic politics and patronage systems. It notes how political maneuvering often led to corruption and the degradation of democratic processes, underscoring a theme of continuity and problematic political behaviors that persist to this day. The transition from Catholic-centered Spanish-Filipino society to an imperial, U.S. assimilated one and its complications were also depicted in the cartoons. One example is the unprecedented increase in motorized vehicles in the city. Automobiles became an accessible mode of transportation in the city and led to the emergence of taxis. However, the laws and policy implementation were mediocre, resulting in an increasing colorum and unlicensed vehicles transporting people around the city. The rules governing the issuance of licenses were loose, and traffic police cannot be bothered by rampant violations of traffic rules, direct consequences of the drastic urbanization of the Philippine society. So, the cultural shifts stemming from the transition from Catholic-dominated society to one influenced by American imperialism. So it mentions the rise of motorized transportation in urban areas, especially taxis, and a lack of regulation, which resulted in problems like unlicensed vehicles. The author underscores how the inadequate laws and enforcement arose alongside rapid urbanization reflected broader commentary on the effectiveness of American governance. The lack of proper attention to traffic regulations illustrates systemic issues that arose with modernity, inviting discussions about the impact of such changes on daily life. Another example is what McCoy called the sexual revolution that occurred in 1930s. Young people disturbed the conservative Filipino mindset by engaging in daring yet convert sexual activities in public spaces such as cinemas. Here we can see how that period was the meeting point between the conservative past and the liberated future of the Philippines. The so-called sexual revolution of 1930s within Filipino society highlighting shifts in cultural norms, particularly among the youth. This indicates a growing departure from conservative values, with young people exploring burgeoning sexual freedoms in public spaces like cinemas. So this exemplifies the tension between traditional and modern values, indicating a cultural transformation influenced by a blend of local and foreign ideologies. Lastly, the cartoons also illustrated the conditions of poor Filipinos in the Philippines, now governed by the United States. From the looks of it, nothing much has changed. For example, a cartoon depicted how police authorities oppressed petty Filipino criminals while turning a blind eye on hoarders who monopolize goods in their vast warehouses. Uh, Example, presumably Chinese merchants. The other cartoon was depicting how the United States controlled Filipinos through seemingly harmless U.S. objects. By controlling their consciousness and mentality, Americans got to control the subjugate Filipinos. This delves into the depiction of socioeconomic equality in the American occupation period, focusing on the experiences of the Filipino poor. It discusses how some cartoons portrayed the oppressive actions of the authorities against petty offenders while ignoring the deeper systematic issues related to wealth hoarding among elites, such as Chinese merchants. This duality in presentation criticizes the selective enforcement of laws and the societal neglect felt by the majority of the Filipinos. illustrating a disconnect between a government actions and the realities faced by everyday people. The nature of Japanese propaganda comic strips presented in this lesson is different from the political cartoons discussed previously. Because of Japanese media censorship, the Filipinos cannot depict anything political that could upset the Japanese. Thus, most of the strips just echo the programs and campaigns of the Japanese. Like the case of Ross comic strip, Now I've Seen Everything, which heralded the teaching of the Japanese language. Another program of the Japanese was Radio Taiso, a daily exercise regimen that everyone was urged to participate in because the exercise cues set to music were broadcast through the radio. In the Kalibapi family strip, when Nene wakes up her brother to make him do the exercise, we see the connection between exercising and being a soldier, an ideal that the Japanese championed. As the Japanese led the Philippines, they attempted to transplant their militaristic ideas to Filipinos, advocating that Filipinos must have a strong military to fight the Americans. However, this line of thinking also promotes and legitimizes the presence of the Japanese Imperial Army in the Philippines. So, the previous political cartoons with Japanese propaganda comic strips during World War II, the author notes how Japanese media censorship limited Filipinos' ability to express dissent or critique the occupiers, leading many comic strips to promote Japanese propaganda instead. It highlights examples of comic strips echoing Japanese programs such as language education and exercise regimens, which intertwine Japanese military ideals with everyday life in the Philippines. This suggests acceptance of Japanese narratives among some Filipinos, uh, although necessary to adaptation to occupation. Through the comic strips, we also see the state of the Philippines during World War II, a distinct period of hardship, hunger, and oppression. We see how Teotasio reacted with disgust when was suggested that the restaurant serve cat meat instead of pork and chicken. During this time of hardship, a lot of food substitutions had to be done to replace food products that have become scarce. For example, instead of tomatoes, bananas were used to make ketchup, or instead of coffee beans, rice were toasted until burnt, then mixed in the water to make coffee. While Filipinos made to do these replacements, some substitutions are just not acceptable, such as eating cuts. The dire food situation of the war also reflected in the comic strips. As represented by Nana's prayer, she realizes that she cannot say thanks for the bread, when the reality is they have not been eating bread. The food staple during the World War was carnot, an easy to propagate root crop. Food insecurity was intense during the war, especially in the later periods of the occupation when Japan has been losing many of its battles and eventually the war. So they examined the war's impact on Filipinos' life, examining on food scarcity and its uh, representation in comic strips. It shares anecdotes reflecting the severe lack of food during the occupation, characterized by imaginative yet desperate food substitutions. These grim realities, no, these grim realities serve to illustrate the hardships Filipinos faced during the war, using humor in a way that both emphasizes the absurdity of the situation and critiques the Japanese administration's failures to provide basic necessities. Interestingly, the authors of these comic strips were not Japanese. Rose and Tony Velasquez are Filipinos, and Velasquez in particular has been a known comiquero even before the occupation, creating the famous character of Kenkoy. We see in his strips of subtle attempts in trying to subvert the Japanese and probably their inability to understand the cultural nuances of the Filipino and English languages. We could read his comic strips as resistance against the Japanese. For instance, Nene's prayer could be constructed as a critique against the Japanese inability to secure food nations such as rice during the war. But then again, the very nature of this propaganda materials is that they allow multiple interpretations and significations. However, these visual resources will enable us to glean the realities of life for Filipinos during World War II in that country. So, they review the creators of the propaganda comic strips, revealing they were not Japanese but Filipino artists, notably Ross and Tony Velasquez. So the author points out the subtle resistance embedded in their work, as some strips can be viewed as critics of Japanese rule and its failures. This suggests that while the comic strips served a propagandistic purpose, they also allowed for creative expression and dissent. Um, the multi-layered pre- rep- the multi-layered interpretations highlight the complexity of cultural production during repressive regimes, the, illustrating how satire and humor can act as forms of resistance against domination. So, overall, this analysis showcases the multifaceted interactions between political, cultural, and social spheres and during periods of foreign occupation in the Philippines, as interpreted through the lens of political caricatures and comic strips. So to sum it all up, first, the period of American colonization of the Philippines from 1899 to 1946 left an indelible mark in the Filipino identity by shaping contours of our government and other Philippine institutions. The struggle for Philippine independence shifted from physical to political battles as the United States annexed the Philippines and gave rise to Filipino political elites who used their privileged positions to fight for the parameters of independence while engaging in corruption and patronage politics. Third, the public land laws enacted by the Americans indicate their perspective on unproductive lands in Mindanao that were raffled off the rest of the country, resulting in a permanent demographic shift and conflicts that resonate until today. And lastly, the political caricatures from American period and propaganda comic strips from the Japanese occupation reconstruct the past in our imagination by visualizing the political, social, and economic issues of the time. That's all, and thank you. God bless everyone. Thank you for listening.